Welcome to Individuality Unleashed. I'm Vern Tremble, Senior Director of Marketing at Wunderkind, and we're happy to see you again today. We're all about helping retailers drive more awareness for their brands, attain more customers, keep those customers, and ultimately drive more revenue for their business, all without having to use third-party cookies and ultimately being able to use their own channels in order to do that. Today, I'm joined by Richard Jones, our CRO, and we're going to be talking about a super important topic today. It is inflation and the retail recession. So we don't want you to get nervous. This is a very topical, very important conversation that we're going to have, but we're going to share some real serious insights with you guys today and hopefully provide some value and some calm in the face of the storms and all these headwinds to help get you through some of the challenges that we'll face considering this impending recession. So, Rich, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Good, sir. Very good to be on Individuality Unleashed again and looking forward to dig into such a depressing topic.
I mean, it is serious, but we are going to supply ways to get through this depressing moment and this depressing topic with humor and a lot of actionable insight and value that our viewers and listeners can take back to their marketing teams to help them overcome this hurdle. Sound good?
Let's do it.
Sweet. So all signs, as I said, point to a recession. Just checked out some stats from the Fed, and they said that there has been a 6.4% inflation increase over the last few months.
The rest.
Right. And this was a cool stat, which was also the last time since January of 1982 that inflation has been so high. So just a point of reference, I wasn't even born yet. So...
yeah, I was 43. Not quite, but I can tell you this isn't my first inflationary cycle. That was most of my childhood was in a really tough inflationary cycle.
So it should be good for you guys here that we have someone here that has experienced this and is not making it up. He knows what's going on. So prices obviously are increasing and it's impacting consumers as well as brands. Rich, what I'd love to start with today is understanding and having you shed some light on the current market landscape and what retailers should be thinking about and considering these economic headwinds.
Right. Well, let's start with an example to set the scene. So recently, cosmetic brand Revlon filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. And they're a household name, right? So it sparked a lot of concern that more retailers will be next. Skyrocketing prices, of course, have decreased demand for certain goods and pushed consumers to rethink their priorities, which is troubling for retailers who find themselves sitting on inventory that they may no longer need, also on the back of all these supply chain delays to get the inventory in the first place.
That's really tough, Rich, just trouble on top of trouble. So what are we looking at right now?
Well, what you typically see in a recession, of course, is that as prices go up, sales go down, which can lead to job losses, stagnating business growth, and even bankruptcies. So it's particularly hard for small family-owned businesses as they often lack the resources to weather the harder times. The only thing that's really weird about the situation we're in right now is that, of course, we haven't got the job losses yet. There is some job losses for companies that be tying their belts, but overall, the job market is still very, very good. But many larger retailers are also facing challenges that might make it tough to face a recession, and increasing debt, unfortunately, is also one of those things that's weighing in right now. To the slowing revenue growth, the squeezed margins, the higher business expenses, and a slump in sales.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's an ebb and flow. It's something that we've experienced before, but certainly something that we could handle, I assume. We'll get to that, but can you give us a little bit more insight on the scene that we're in?
So, if you think about it, like retailers that have weaknesses, right, in the foundations of their IT and supply chain infrastructures are particularly vulnerable and struggle to cope with the lack of in-store traffic or perhaps the demand on digital or the instability in the supply chain. And this is all happening on the back of issues on the product supply side with lockdowns in zero COVID China, right? We've moved on from COVID, but of course China's right in the middle of these zero COVID lockdown policies, which are delaying shipments to the US, and the hike in prices of raw materials is following. So the price of cotton, for example, has more than doubled in the last 2 years, causing issues for fashion retailers in particular. And polyester is also an issue because it's derived from oil.
So it's just abundantly clear how this could be impacting retailers. I mean, their textiles at minimum is being impacted by all of this.
Yeah, and there is also this threat of the so-called stagflation, which is when slow economic growth, usually due to high unemployment, occurs simultaneously with rising prices due to inflation. So if retail sales do drop, right, and unemployment will rise, we could end up in a stagflationary scenario. So overall, it's a pretty tricky situation with many contributing factors, but retail prices are increasing unsustainably, and inflation, unfortunately, is likely to continue well into 2023.
So all in all, challenges ahead, and
Yes.
we honestly can't avoid it. So the thing that I'm interested in learning right now is how does inflation, or how will inflation impact consumer behaviors? And I'm certain our brands would want to know that as well.
Right, and as the cost of living kind of really starts to squeeze with all of these price rises, all this inflationary pressure, consumers obviously pull back on spending as they wish to save money in times of uncertainty. Unfortunately, there is a very, very large percentage of the US population that only has around a month of available capital if to pay their bills if something goes wrong and they have job losses. So people are going to need to save in order to weather this uncertainty.
Yeah, and I mean, I imagine that can only get worse. Like it's like prices are going up, and for the most part, businesses are either not increasing salaries, or for some folks in certain geos in certain industries, they're losing their jobs.
Yeah, no, 100%. Now, a report by the NPD Group showed that in the first 3 quarters of 2022, consumers bought 6% fewer items than they did last year, and more than 8 in 10 consumers plan to cut spending in the next 3 to 6 months. So it's definitely happening.
Yeah. So can you give us more about like what customers are thinking about as far as like the resources they have to even be able to weather this storm?
Well, unfortunately, many customers have been relying on their credit cards to keep up with the rising prices. We've seen that in many places around the world, which is why consumer debt levels are nearing an all-time high. And this also isn't sustainable. So it's likely that soon customers will be forced to cut back drastically. And when they do, retailers will need to be prepared because it's going to affect their sales. Now, consumers aren't buying just fewer items, they're also shopping less often, which means retailers also lose out on impulse purchases.
So consumers really have a choice here, and they're going to make those choices based on what's available to them. So that's certainly something that retailers should keep in mind, I would imagine.
Yeah, but let's face it, also, this isn't a kind of one-size-fits-all issue as things are today. The extent to which inflation affects consumer behavior does depend on demographics, which is where knowing your customer really is key. Americans with lower incomes are really feeling the pinch right now, whereas now, for at least wealthy consumers in places like Europe and the US are continuing to splurge on luxury goods.
That's really interesting. I mean, that's when you think about the demographics of your consumers, you really have to kind of split your mind and understanding like how should I be communicating with them, considering the economic hardships and the economic hard times that a lot of our consumers are facing, or the ones that aren't facing the economic hard times.
And it's infecting industries differently, right? Home goods, fashion, and department stores are likely to come under the most strain. The Commerce Department reported that furniture and home furnishing retailers, electronics and appliance stores, and health and personal care chains all saw month-over-month declines. And another report showed that retail sales plunged 20% from February to April, with fashion seeing the largest decline at 89%, followed by department stores at 45%, which is why, Vern, I am doing my bit to help the fashion industry with the purchase of this new Melon hat.
Which I love, by the way. You're going to have to send me one.
You won't, I'm not going to get run over by a car crossing the road with this on. I'm gonna tell you that.
No, it is. I imagine it's super reflective, so I can imagine your nighttime jogs, you'll be all fine. But all jokes aside, like we want to balance out the seriousness and the humor. But this sounds really bleak, Rich. Like I can't understate it, and like we can't shirk about it. But I want to talk about how we could potentially find a silver lining in this dark gray cloud, if you will. Are there any opportunities out there? Like, are there positives for retailers during this recession?
100%. There always is.
Okay.
But you just have to look harder for them. So past recessions have taught us that they expose existing weaknesses, right? They accelerate emerging trends and they force organizations to make structural changes faster than they otherwise would have, which is why recessions are always very fertile grounds for innovative thinking, for the launching of new business models, for creating new companies, launching new brands. I myself started up my company that I sold a few years ago in the Great Recession, 2009. So it really is a time for creative thinkers to get unleashed. And this is particularly true in the retail sector. During the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, e-commerce flourished while brick and mortar retails declined. And that was a trend that continued after the economy recovered, of course.
And certainly a lot of people picked up on that trend and were able to make that strategic shift to take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, now clearly the situation is a huge challenge for retailers, right? We don't want to pretend that it's not. And the industry is likely to look much different than it did before as we come through and out the other side of this recession. But those who take on the challenge and successfully adapt to new trends could well emerge stronger and offer their employees, their customers, and their key stakeholders a brighter future.
I love it, Rich. Well, so what I want to know is, what does that look like? You talked about the company that you built during a recession being a time of fertility, if you will, and innovation and ingenuity. Can you talk about the kinds of things retailers could do to sustain business and marketing performance and even grow during a challenging market?
Yeah, well, the most important thing is to go where the headroom is. And headroom means you don't have a market share minus a market share that you won't get, right? In tough times, retail leaders can, fall into the trap of trying to do everything at once and launching too many initiatives that don't actually drive a real business impact. And this can be a big mistake at a time when your budgets, your time, your resources are more limited than normal. And getting the highest return on those resources is actually what is paramount. Retailers need to understand where their headroom is and then form a strategy to actually get at it. And of course, it's a bit of a shameless plug, but this is something that we do at Wunderkind, which we do normally in a normal economic times, but it becomes even more important in a recessionary time. And that is, we help retailers and brands deliver more return on ad spend. And we encourage our customers and our prospects to think about finding out in their Google Analytics and all their other packages, what's the weaker performing paid media they have, translate that over to Wunderkind, and we will guarantee a much, much higher return on that ad spend through, exposing a new revenue performance channel that they're not used to, or they have not been doing very well, and actually take that and do it on, turbocharged, on steroids, and really delivering great results. And it's all about being the most efficient you can with the spend that you have. So that's really key.
So should brands be thinking about acquisition? Should they be thinking about retention? What's the focus there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of customers will think, oh, okay, downturn, it's going to be hard to get new customers. Let's really focus on our most loyal customers, and that makes sense to a point. But the thing is, you're already getting, a substantial amount of money out of your most loyal customers. That's why they're the most loyal customers.
Yes.
And if they suddenly start spending 25% less because of the recession, most of that will come out of what they spend in your stores or online. And that's why actually your most loyal customers are not necessarily your best source of revenue growth in a recession.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and you think about it, you're unlikely also to succeed in stealing customers who are fiercely loyal to other retailers as well. Your best opportunity is actually for revenue to look at who are the switchers. Now, these are the people who spend money both in your shops and elsewhere. And if you take, say, 20% of what they're spending today, but you manage to increase that to 30%, you'll achieve a net gain even if their total spending drops by 25%.
So then how do we do that? How do we figure out who those people are?
Well, to do that, you need to identify the people that are shopping with you and with other retailers, and then figure out what they're buying elsewhere or what they want and can't find at all, and then adjust your offer to meet their needs better. And one of the best ways that you can do this is understanding your customers better that do come to your online channels and engage with you there. So identity is increasingly important.
That's really phenomenal, Rich. Again, more incredible. What else can you tell us about this time? What else should retailers be looking at?
Well, I mean, of course, we can't talk about any of this without considering the significant acceleration of digital that we saw during the pandemic, right? Retailers have had to be nimble and meet consumer needs in new, more convenient ways, such as buying online, picking up in store, curbside pickup and delivery, et cetera, et cetera. Now, consumers are open to new digital experiences. We saw that in the pandemic, whether it's virtual payments or online grocery ordering, delivery. Retailers that have the systems in place to offer these options are faring better than others. And I think we're going to see that accelerate in a recession. But to do that, you need to, you've got to have solid supply chain and IT infrastructure to roll out new digital experiences quickly. And retailers without that solid foundation must fix that leaky bucket hole quickly to survive what's coming next.
That's good. Leaky bucket hole. Yes, that's because that's what's happening. Again, bleak. But are so many great opportunities you just highlighted to us, Rich. Is there anything else?
There is one other that we should also mention is that, mergers and acquisitions also increase in recessions, in terms of there's going to be a lot of companies that wouldn't ordinarily have put themselves up for sale, being forced to do so. And I think if you've got a keen eye on looking at the opportunities to add what are actually great businesses, they're just being under undue pressure because of the extreme nature of what happens in a recession. There's great inorganic growth opportunities for well-capitalized businesses. So we'll see much more of that as well in the coming months.
That's amazing, and excellent exit opportunities for those smaller businesses that have invested a lot.
Not always excellent in a recession.
Not always excellent, but there's a silver lining, is what I should say. There was an opportunity somewhere baked in all of that, I should say. So this is great, Rich, and I think everything that you hit upon is certainly valuable to me as a marketer, but I'm certainly hoping that it's valuable to the brands out there that are looking for strategies to help them ultimately weather this looming storm. I want to shift gears just a little bit real quick on a topic that is near and dear to all marketers' hearts out there, from a company that is, had its humble beginnings, but continues to dominate the news cycle with any utterance of a change or any semblance of evolution. We hear about them, and I want to talk about Google and this third-party cookie deprecation that they keep yanking us along with. As you know, Google pushed back deprecation of third-party cookies for a second time to 2024. And ultimately, this gives marketers, for me, in my opinion, an opportunity to get their ducks in a row and really leverage solutions that harness first-party data as opposed to third-party data to ultimately drive their strategies into the future. What would you say to brands that are dragging their feet right now as they wait for this deprecation to actually happen?
Well, it's definitely happening. You can only kick the can so far down the road. Right. The privacy hasn't gone away. Ad tech disruption hasn't gone away. Legislative pressure on those things hasn't gone away. So, it's definitely happening. And what we're going to see is third-party cookies disappear from our toolkits. The kind of ubiquitous digital marketing approaches that relied on them are rapidly going to become obsolete. And our research shows that companies and customers disagree about the utility of cookies. Even though about 78 to 85% of brands in the US rely on cookies to maintain sales, most marketers now are well advanced in creating strategies to survive beyond, in the cookieless future. So we're helping, for example, over 650 leading retailers to prepare for the cookieless future with game-changing identity technology that drives sustainable growth through first-party data, and that is the biggest shift that we're going to see out of all of this privacy-driven ad tech disruption.
Have other brands picked up on this? Like, are they realizing what's happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's realizing it, I think. But, it was an Adweek article recently that showed that there was a growing trend in brands that see Google's delay as mostly irrelevant, right, as they've begun the process of finding alternatives to third-party cookies. Now, Chrome obviously represents a significant portion of the ecosystem, but brands have gotten the hint. They need to find another way, and most marketers are, decently advanced in thinking through this as a strategy. Whether they've, got to the where they need to be is another thing. But of course, Google, I think this will be the last time they kick the can down the road, just because I know they're torn because of the amount of money they're going to lose by deprecating the third-party cookie advertising. But as I said, the impact to their business from the legislation that's being threatened is bigger. So I think this is the last time that they'll kick the can down the road.
That's interesting. Rich, one of the things I want to call out to our audience is that we have, in fact, released a new guide to the cookieless future, because the cookieless future is inevitable. It is happening, and we want you to be prepared. You can actually go to www.wunderkind.co to download your copy of this cookieless future guide. In that guide, we will talk about topics around how to fuel growth with first-party data. We'll also highlight a leading brand that scaled communications and increased revenue using first-party data, and ultimately we'll uncover how to scale channels to produce greater ROI, which is significantly important to our brands out there that are looking to weather the storm of this impending and looming economic recession. Rich, before we get out of here, again, like I said, this podcast episode was going to be a little bleak. We kept it a little light, but in all seriousness, we do want to, and we did want to shed light on the looming impact of inflation and the retail recession that is out there, that quite frankly is at the front steps and the front door of most retailers out there. I want to give you an opportunity to sum this up, give any final words of encouragement or advice to retailers out there that are facing these economic headwinds.
Well, a couple of things. As I said, treat this as an opportunity to get more efficient with the spend that you do have to drive the best return. I can guarantee you that there are opportunities to do that and to deliver better results and better return on your advertising spend as a retailer. And download the Cookieless Future report, right? Not only is it dope, but it also talks about the sorts of things that you need to do to survive the cookieless future and build your business around first-party data, is also the same set of things that you can do to increase the efficiency for, say the bottom 5 or the bottom 10% of your advertising budget, redeploy it in a different way that will get you far, far higher return on advertising spend, and capture whole loads of first-party data, which is super important for where ad tech disruption is driving us as marketers. So don't miss out.
This is phenomenal. Rich, again, thank you so much for joining us again today. I think you have delivered so much valuable insight to our audience. I hope that you guys stay tuned for future episodes as we hope to weather this storm right along with you. We are right there at the front lines, paying attention to these trends and to these developments, making sure that we're delivering this information to you in a succinct way that you can use, take back to your team, deploy, and ultimately help drive increased revenue. So again, Rich, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Vern.
Thank you. And again, that's Individuality Unleashed. See you next time.